Look forward to hearing about questions that you have. I have a couple of updates from my side, a couple of updates from the Semantic Kernel team as well. I do first off want to remind everyone that this is our weekly US and EMEA office hours. It occurs every Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. We also have a monthly instance for folks wanting to join and get feedback in different time zones as well. And so if you have colleagues or know of individuals in the APAC time zone, do let them know about this and to join. It's on the second Wednesday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. So today will be our monthly slot with them for November. I want to dive into a couple of updates in terms of releases. We have .NET 1.28.0 out, and there's a number of different changes. I just want to highlight there is some added support for OpenAI image detail in the level property. And then also another key highlight is the shared cross-runtime integrations to be able to test for processes as well. So if you haven't had a chance within .NET to try out this latest release, we recommend you take some time to do that. I will put the link to it and to others in chat as well. And please give us feedback as you try out any of our new releases. And then just want to highlight for Python as well. I mentioned last time some of the updates there, but just to go over them, there's the introductory vector and text search and being able to go through implementing that. There's some concept code samples there as well. And then there's also the added vector search in memory as well that Edward's been working on. So just wanted to highlight all these great updates for everyone to go and look at and try out. In documentation, we've been going through and getting ready for Ignite, and there's some updates around different connectors in vector search and in vector store as well. And so we're going through and making some of those updates, but you should see additional docs updates as well as we head into Ignite. And so stay tuned for updates there. And I do want to highlight, as always, our backlog by bucket. I know a lot of individuals like to be able to see what's coming next. So I've dropped a link in chat as well if you want to check that out further. But I want to take a minute to go through some of our latest blog posts. There's a great one that we chatted about with chat history last week during office hours and went through a demo. And if you weren't able to attend, that recording is out, but would recommend you take a minute to go through the blog post that talks about the updates with chat history. I know it's been a topic that we've had a lot of questions from the community on as well. So just wanted to highlight that to folks. We also have the Java out for 1.4.0. And so there's some big updates that the Java team has been working on that they highlight in the blog post and some updates within their APIs as well. And then finally, before we dive into some feature announcements, there is some updates around kernel functions in a blog post that we've shared out. I'll put a link to that in chat as well. I know I have all the blog post link as well, but just wanted to highlight all these great updates to community. Before we get into your questions, I'm going to turn it over to Evan to go through Dapper Runtime in Python. Evan, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, we've been making progress with processes in Python. One of the latest features we're working on, which is in PR currently, is the Dapper runtime. So, as you may or may not be aware, this is available on the .NET side. So we wanted to make sure to add this parity in Python. So aside from the local runtime that we shipped processes with, it's one of the ones customers have been asking for. And so there's a link to the PR 9642. We should be getting that into main this week. But what it includes, obviously, with the runtime is a demo that explains kind of how to set up a fast API Dapper app, what configuration would look like, and just here in a second I'll show what that does look like. But it's exciting. We love for those who are working in Python. If you want to take a look at the PR, provide some input or ask some questions, we'd value that. So I'm going to share my screen quickly, Sophia, and we'll just go through a quick demo of what that looks like in Python.
Perfect.
Can everybody see my screen?
I can see it. Can others see it as well? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Perfect.
Okay, so when this does go into main, In this Python samples demos folder, you'll see a process with Dapper. So in here, we have two files so far. This README, which you can see on the screen, and then the app, the Fast API app. So this is a similar demo to what we have on the .NET side. It may be familiar if you've seen it. It's just showing that we're going to run some various steps, a kickoff step, and then it's going to fan out to an A and B, which then fan into a C step. And the C step has some state involved with it. I think it's like C step state or something like that, which we're initializing with a variable account of 1. And we just wanted to show how this works with the Dapper virtual actors and how state is implemented and how to expose the kernel, because it's a little bit different than we did with the local runtime. But what we're going to see when I kick off this is the kickoff ran. We have the two A and B steps that run, and then we see the C step is activated with a cycle count of 1. We then increment that. We run the kickoff again per this diagram. We see A and B run, and then we increment the C step count to 3, and then we get an exit. So again, trying to show how this works without getting too deep into having to hook up AI services and such, but one can extrapolate that out. And then if we were to run it again, because the actors already exist and the state exists, we get the C step incremented to 4. That's greater than equal to 3, and so we exit. And so this README you can go through a little bit later. We need to kick it off with this particular API call that we have defined in our Fast API, and you can specify the process ID to be whatever you like, 1, 2, 3, 4, ABCD, or whatever else it is. So it's just showing some of the dependencies that you would need, some of the imports, and then how to create the process actor factories so that we can inject a kernel. There are callbacks, what we do to register the actors with the Dapper framework, and then creating the Fast API app. So same code is here. You would need to make sure that you follow, as you would in .NET, the Dapper getting started. You have to get the Dapper container running so that it has the sidecar and it can create the actors as it needs. All this is API calls. Similar to the local runtime, you're registering the actors as types. They don't get actually created as instances until they're needed. Dapper will create the actor, break down the actor. It's the benefit of using the framework. But this is all going to look similar to another example we have in our Python repo, creating the process in the same way, adding the step, hooking everything up and as we want to connect to see what happens with the events and so on and so forth. And then all that gets created when the API call is triggered, and then our response is getting the process ID back. So I will kick this off. In Python, if you're using VS Code, you'll come to the debugger and select the Python app with Dapper. Push play. This will start up the necessary processes. We can see Dapper D is running. And then when we see the actor, there's a little logger here that shows that the actors were registered. It'll take a second. Actor startup. So we know that the actors are registered. We can then come back here. I've actually got the logging turned to error only, so otherwise you would see lots of API calls, but I'm entering just a random process ID, hitting localhost. That triggers, and we can come back to the Python debug console and we can see that the various steps are running, the process is running, and we hit our expected cycle 3 count and we're exiting. So then if I were just to go back to run it again, we would see that it would run it again. Step 3 is exiting because we hit a particular count greater than 4, and it picked up the state that it already had. So you could go in to look at the Redis CLI and see all the various state that we have run, and the Dapper provides different state stores one can hook up to, which is a great benefit of using this runtime. that is all I have for now. As I said, it's in PR. Would love for people to get eyes on it, provide feedback, ask questions, and it's going to get into main very soon.
Great, thanks so much, Evan. I put a link in chat to the PR as well. Would love to be able to have folks go through and take a look. If you have any questions, do let us know. I'm not saying anything in chat, but just want to pause for a minute before we go to our next topic. I see we have a potential hand up. Does that individual want to come off of mute? I think it was Bill. If not, any other questions folks have? If not, we'll go into our next topic, and then we can always come back if there are questions folks think of an open Q&A. The next topic and update we have from our Semantic Kernel team is some coming soon updates for Python for audio to text and text to audio. So I'm going to turn it over to Tao to dive into those. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, hi, good morning. Yeah, we're excited to announce we are adding audio supports to Semantic Kernel Python, and this new audio feature will enable developers like you to create more interactive and accessible user experiences in your application. So with the new audio to text and text to audio interface, we're adding a new kernel content called the audio content, which is kind of like the image content that wraps around the raw audio data, and then you can interact with that the audio content object inside semantic kernel. So you don't need to manipulate audio data yourself. And then with these two new interfaces, we're adding currently we have the OpenAI and Azure OpenAI connectors available that allow you to hook up to your Azure OpenAI deployments on models like Whisper or models like TTS, which will convert text to audio. And then everything is in main, but we are waiting for the next release for this to be available to all the developers. We also provide samples, step-by-step samples to guide you through how to use these new services. I'm going to share my screen. Just 1 second. Yeah, so as I said, everything is in main, and we have it's the samples are under Semantic Kernel Python sample concepts audio, and then the first sample it's going to guide you through how to use how to add audio input to a very simple chat app that we have using across our all our samples. The only thing we are doing is we're adding this audio to text service, and then instead of taking user inputs from the keyboard, we're taking user inputs through your audio device. And we also underneath this audio folder, we have these two helper classes to help you work with audio more easily. So you don't have to code your you don't have to figure out how to work with audio on your computer. You can just use this audio recorder and then record the audio and then transcribe the audio into text. And then the rest is very similar to a normal chat app. And then the next one, instead of using the audio to text, we're going to show you how to use the text to audio. Again, it's very similar. At this time, we're using text input as well, but then after you get a response from the model, we will convert the text into audio using the service. And then we're going to, again, use the helper class to play the audio in real time. And the last one is just a combination of the previous two. Yeah, you're using both services to make a audio-only chat experience where user can talk and listen to your chatbot. Yeah, so this is exciting. And one thing to note is this is different from the real-time API that OpenAI announced a couple of weeks ago, I think. What this feature is to, instead of providing audio directly to the model and have the model return audio directly, we're doing two more steps in between. One is at the beginning, you're transcribing, you're converting your audio to text, and then at the end, we're converting the text back to the audio. We're working actively to add support for the real-time API, but this would get you started. And yeah, so this is all I have.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tom. I'm seeing a great question in chat of, will this support GTP 4.0 real-time preview?
Yeah, that's what I said right before ending the presentation. This is not the real-time API. I think right now with the audio content, I'm going to create another sample on how to use the audio content with existing chat completion connectors with the GPT 4.0 preview, which supports audio in and audio out. So I think we do support that with the new audio contents. We just need to provide a sample on how to do that.
Perfect. And I see that the individual doesn't have any follow-up questions as well. So thank you so much for diving into that, Tao. Any other questions folks may have, feel free to come off of mute. We'd love to hear from you. If there are no other questions on audio to text and this announcement from Tao, we'll move into open Q&A. But if you think of questions, feel free to come off of me. We'd love to hear you. Thanks so much, Tao. Are there other questions folks have or other things you've been working through this week that you want to bring up to the Semantic Kernel team? We'd love to hear from you. Perfect. I'm seeing a couple in chat. Heinrich, and excuse me if I'm saying your name wrong, do you mind coming off of mute? We'd love to kind of chat through the issue that you're having.
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. So I'm just reading through briefly and for the team as well. Do you mind just summarizing what kind of the biggest issue is that you're having right now when you're working through the add Azure OpenAI chat completion method?
Yeah, the problem is creating my kernel. I want to add an OpenAI chat completion. And for that, I need to have the configuration, the key endpoint, etc. So that's one thing. Then I also want to add logging using the function invocation filter. And I have some dependencies in that implementation of the function invocation filter. So those dependencies are in my normal applications dependency root. And I would really hate to have to add them to the kernel iService collection. So the problem is that I can use dependency injection to avoid doing that, but then I have to configure my connection to OpenAI, the key, etc., at startup of the application. And how do I avoid that? How do I both have the possibility to configure which key I want to use? It is definable by the user, so it should not be at startup. and how do I still have dependency injection?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I'm going to hand it over to Ben and then be able to pass to the team from there. Ben, do you have any thoughts?
Hey, I'm having some audio issues, so I only heard part of that. If someone that heard more of that could answer, that would be great. Sorry about that.
I can jump in. So as far as I understand, you want to provide API key to your OpenAI chat completion service in runtime instead of like application startup, right?
Yeah, because then the user can bring their own.
Okay, so
and I can do that using the create builder approach with the kernel builder, because then I can just before calling the OpenAI functionality, then I can just say which key I want. But then I don't have the dependency injection.
So I have a suggestion as well around this, Dimitro. If you're happy for me to step in. So this is probably not the most common scenario, but what I would probably do in this scenario is create a factory to register, with dependency injection, and the factory takes an API key, and then the factory can basically switch between the different providers internally and construct them and return the right one that you want, but while taking an API key as input. Now, it's going to still be tricky because not every provider necessarily uses API keys.
Well, the problem is not so much that I want to switch between OpenAI and the other providers. The problem is more than that, because I can live with that, having to implement it for each of them. The problem is more that the user might bring their own. In most enterprise software as a service solutions, my guess is that the customer wants to bring their own API key.
Sure, and actually, I'm going to paste a link in chat as well to, it's certainly possible to construct your own instance of any of these packages, or any of these connectors. You don't necessarily have to go through dependency injection, and if you don't know at startup what your API key is going to be, and you're not really that worried about switching between different instances, then you could probably just directly construct, via the sample that I just pasted.
Yeah, okay. But
Perfect. Thanks.
And then,
how
and then,
does that then connect to the kernel?
so basically, when you initialize chat completion service and you call a method like get chat contents, async, it accepts kernel as a parameter. So as soon as you pass kernel as a parameter, as soon as you pass kernel as a parameter, it's going to use like all of the kernel services, including filters as well.
Yeah. Okay. So that okay. That was something on the line in the line of what I was asking for. Good. Thank you. I will try that.
Perfect. And let us know if you have any questions as you're going through the sample that Wesley put in chat as well. And outside of our ongoing office hours, we have GitHub discussions, which we triage and as a team engage with daily as well. So if you have further questions, feel free to reach out. I see we have a hand up. Carl, do you want to come off of mute? We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. So the problem I'm facing is about prompt injection attacks. So I came across an article about the user being able to send a prompt with, for example, message tags and have it automatically be converted to chat history instances and then mess up with the message history. So to protect against that, there's a mechanism in place to HTML encode those tags and then keep it safe, basically. Is that clear so far?
Yeah, it's clear to me. I know for chat history,
Mm.
we have both Evan and Dimitro on as Mark is out, but that makes sense so far. Anything from
Yeah.
anyone on the Semantic Kernel team to add before we proceed with the rest of the scenario?
No, I mean we allow a toggle to allow, I forget what it's called, allow unsafe content
Yeah.
or dangerous content or something.
Yeah, so my question is about, so I have, let's say, a function that needs to be called, and then the result of this function will eventually be added to the chat history. However, my function will return a JSON object. And actually, my function is made up of multiple steps, and one of those steps will produce a JSON string, which contains a lot of those unsafe contents. So I've tried to set that flag for this function alone, but however, like I noticed without setting the flags or anything, it would encode it twice. So it would encode the already encoded version. So I tried setting this flag, and it only did it once now, but I still needed to just ignore the unsafe contents in this particular variable. And I've noticed that in the function filter, so I've added the function filter to the kernel. The result of the function is clean, and then when it's added to the kernel arguments, that's when it gets encoded the first time. So I'm trying to understand if, like, what are the other ways there are to avoid that, or if there's a way to just avoid this like automatic conversion of like of the chat history to protect against this, while I can just ignore all my unsafe contents at the same time while still being relatively safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Are you, which language are you using?
I'm using .NET C#.
.NET?
Yeah, I think it would be easier if you would create an issue and share some code examples with that. For example, like what you are trying to achieve and what's not possible today. Is it like acceptable for you?
All right, I can do that as well.
Or
But
you
I
can
was just
share some code examples in the chat as well.
okay. I don't know if I can do that on this call. It's probably better to share some examples later. But yeah, I was looking for like bigger lines of in that article that I found. There's three possible ways. One of those ways is just disable all of the unsafe contents. But I like this is not an ideal solution because I still want some protection against some of the variables that like the user might give us some unsafe text. So yeah, I'll create an issue and follow up later.
That'd be
Sounds good.
great. Yeah,
Thank
we'd
you.
love to be able to dive into this further. So if you could create an issue, we can look into it and just make sure that we have the right guidance in place. Thanks so much for coming off of
All
mute and
right.
asking the question.
Thank you.
I'm seeing in chat a great question around chat history from Amal. Would you mind coming off of me? We'd love to hear from you a bit more in detail, and also which language you're currently using for your chat history scenario as well. And then Amal, if you're speaking, we're not able to hear you. Okay, so we'll come back just with audio, but do really want to hear from your scenario there. I see that there's a question chat from Steve around some of the agent work with open assistant agents regarding a bug that was filed and wanted to chat with Chris. Chris, do you mind if we dive into that a bit more? Steve, we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, no, I was looking forward to that.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, the which filter I'm scanning for the issues now?
Let me post the issue for you, but it was
Thank you.
so it was both the invocation filters, so tool call usages, as well I could get filters as well as prompt filtering. Perhaps I have something configured incorrectly, but it's the exact same DI pattern that I'm using for a normal chat async. It just seems to be with these with the OpenAI agent. For some reason, it wasn't firing.
Yep. I'd expect the function filters to be equivalent, although prompt filtering is could have some very different dynamics just because of the way. Are you using a templated system instruction?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the prompt filter wouldn't fire because there's likely no prompt templating action occurring.
Right.
But I am concerned that the function filter isn't firing for you. You said it was the auto invocation filter?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a higher requirement for me as well. Like the prompt filtering is less of importance as obviously understanding when the tool calls are being used and what tool calls are being called and the properties. Because we have a kind of a log on the side where we display that in real time to the user. So yeah, that's a pretty big one for us. And then I haven't had time yet, but I do need to submit another bug regarding the OpenAI assistant agents. I found that your tool called dictionary, I traced it into Semantic Kernel's tool called dictionary in, shoot, I forget the class off the top of my head. But what was happening was there was already a key in that dictionary and you guys aren't checking in your code to see that key had already been submitted. It's trying to submit that dictionary item again. And I don't know if this has to do with something regarding auto tool calling with this, with these agents, but there's some type of delta between the way the OpenAI assistant agents work with the kernel and the traditional agents. And it seemed to be throwing that error. I have to get into
Was
the
this
branch.
just streaming or not streaming?
This is streaming, correct? Yep.
You know what? I think pushed a fix for that a couple days ago. I got a different submission on it, and it sounds remarkably similar. I think we're cutting a package today.
Oh, beautiful.
And that should have that in it. I definitely have a cycle today to look at the function calling thing. So I'll dig into that right away. I'll respond to your issue, and then if you could just ping me and let me know if the updated package fixes the dictionary issue. That would be. Hey, I'm just curious, what model were you targeting when you were seeing that error?
So that was GPT-4o, and that error was particularly around loading APIs from the Open API standard. So I had parsed Swagger and then started loading them through that Open API extension package, and that's where that dictionary was coming up with an error.
You may very well have found it. I mean, if you've traced it into Semantic Kernel Core, it might be a different issue. So I'd say please go ahead and file the issue anyway as a placeholder, and then if it's been fixed, we can resolve it. Otherwise, we can also get into that, and I can analyze the integration between assistants and core.
Okay. All right, we'll do. Yeah, I'll get that submitted for you today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Steve. Really appreciate you coming off of me and submitting that as well. I see we have Amal who's joined back. Amal, do you want to try? We'd love to be able to hear about your scenario as well if you want to come off of mute.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we just need a guidance here. So we just assume that there is a function called getEmployeesDetails, and employee has around 15 attributes. Right? And then when somebody is asking for the employee details, we don't want to show the 15 attributes. We just need to show the key 5 attributes. Right? And then when they ask subsequent questions on the next level details, let's say the employee's office or employee's details, then we need to go and fetch the next 10 attributes. So in this case, what should be the guidance here? Do we need to pull all the 15 attributes and then keep it in the chat history? Or based on the on demand, do we need to go and fetch the information?
Yeah, really great question. I'm also going to link to the blog post that Mark had worked through. But Dimitri or Evan, with some of the work you've done, chat history, do either of you have guidance of how it'd be best for Amal to proceed?
Just wondering, like by attributes, you mean like details, like first name, last name, like something like that, right?
Yeah, let's say it's age or next level details. But when we want to get when somebody is asking we can ask just show the key attributes. And let's say they want to go to the next level, they can ask for that specific thing, for example, office location. So if they ask, then we can get that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what you can do, so if you have like get employee details function, right? What you can do, you can return all 15 attributes from that function. And then in system message, as an initial instruction, you can ask model and say like, hey, when user asks about this employee, show him like first 5 attributes. Then if user asks further questions about that employee, like show the remaining attributes, and try to experiment with that approach and see how that works and see how the model reacts. The other way would be to create 2 separate functions. When the first function will be named like get employee basic details, for example, right, or something like that, depending on your scenario, which will return just 5 attributes, and then get employee advanced details, right, or something like that, that will return the 10 remaining attributes. And then based on the user request, the model will decide like which function needs to be called to get that information about employee, and you can use like description attribute to on function or on return parameter if you want like share more information with the model, like the responsibility of each function. If that makes sense.
Just one follow-up question. When it returns, let's say the first call return only 5 attributes. That 5 attributes got displayed on the screen. That only will be available in the chat history, right? If we ask for any follow-up question.
Yes. Yeah, like for example, if you're using automatic function calling and the user asks a question and your function is called and some result is returned, this result will be added to the chat history.
Okay, but yeah, even if it is returning 15 attributes from the function, but there is semantic kernel will be just cutting short and show only the 5 attributes, right? To me, the rest of the things will be lost.
So in case your function returns 15 attributes, so basically by returning 15 attributes, most probably you want to use some complex like class, right? And return that instance of a class in your function get employees details. So all of the instance will be serialized for you and added to chat history as a string. So then it gets back to the model, so model can reason about this information. But in case your function return 15 attributes, it's going to be serialized and added to chat history in full. So it's not going to be stripped or something like that. But again, if you want it to be like stripped or something like that, you want to return just 5. Most probably it's better to use some simple model, simple type, which will return just which will contain just 5 attributes in that function. And if you want like to include all of them, you can use another function which will return more complex class, which will contain all of the functions. But for example, if you have a class, it contains 15 different properties, all of them are initialized, and your function is returning that class. This class will be serialized and then added to chat history in full. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Amal. Really appreciate it. Rachel, I see a really good question around Python and some of the updates. Do you mind coming off of mute? If not, I'm happy to read out your question as well, but would love to hear from you.
Sure. So I was just looking at the release notes on the latest Python release, and there's a mention of vector search. And in the example they're referencing a like semantic kernel connectors.memory. And so I was wondering if that's the same memory that is referred to that will be depreciated, and then we're going to use a vector store if it's a different memory, and if so, like what is its role within next to vector store?
Yeah, really great question. Wesley or Evan M, would either of you want to dive into this further for how we're approaching this within Python? Would love to hear from either of you.
So this is more on the Python side. I'll let the other folks answer.
Okay, perfect. Evan M?
Yeah, so Rachel, your question is around what's being deprecated and what are we using going forward, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we are moving to these vector search options, vector store, record utilities, and the semantic kernel data. It is a little bit confusing because we do have some things like, old style of Azure cognitive search and or memory and such. What this example is showing, though, this step 0, 1, and 2 that we linked to in the hotel sample are that these are the correct classes and modules that we should be using. I'm just looking at the example now. So the Azure AI Search Collection is correct. Wesley, go ahead.
While you're looking at that, I might as well, I'll add as well, we do have a page on the .NET side, which is clearly explaining the difference between the two and the ones that's being deprecated, plus the new ones, plus the nomenclature that we're using for the two. It should be very similar on the Python side. And we'll be adding, so at the moment the page is only for C#, but we'll adding a Python page for this pretty soon as well. So that should help clarify then for Python as well exactly the same, but the naming should be very much the same. Sorry, Evan. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I just pasted the link on the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. And Rachel, if there are any further questions as you're going through, feel free to reach out and GitHub discussions as well on top of our weekly office hours. But hopefully that helps clarify a bit for you.
Yeah, I think so. So it is referring to the same memory. It's not like a different memory abstraction. And I'm guessing it'll eventually, like vector store record utils will eventually move over to dependency on.
Yeah, that the
vector
vector store
store
record utils is new. Same with vector search options. The semantic text memory is not. That's the old abstraction, I think, and Edward had been pushing some stuff out this week. But yeah, we're moving towards the search collection. Everything that you see here in this hotel sample is what we should be moving towards, because this allows you to find your own data model, the complex data model, and not just, a specific collection type that we had in the previous abstractions. But
okay, so
if
then
things don't make, oh, go ahead, please.
go for it.
I was just going to say, if there's further questions you have around this, please, create a GitHub discussion or file an issue if something doesn't make sense. We're trying to get all this to V1 for the new memory abstractions as soon as possible.
And
Okay,
just
so is it still called, I guess I'm just confused because the AI search collection is coming from connectors.memory.
Yeah.
So is that going to remain the same or is that going to change?
No, that's going to stay the same.
Okay.
It's the the references to cognitive search and things like that that are going to go away.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I can just add a comment to that to try to not make things more complicated. All the memory store, I think, are going to be deprecated, and then they're going to be replaced by vector stores, if that makes sense. But then all the vector stores implementation will live under the connector memory dependent package.
Okay. Yeah, that cleared things up. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not creating new packages as such because it would cause quite a bit of disruption, I suppose. But we are ultimately the interfaces have changed from iMemory Store to iVector Store. So it's, and they've changed in such a way that they're incompatible. The naming that we've chosen for Vector Store is more similar to what others are using in the industry as well. And we have to use a different name anyway, otherwise there's clashes. But ultimately, yeah, it's just everything ending in memory store. The new version is ending in vector store. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the question, Rachel, and just bringing this up. We want to make sure that all this is clear and we'll have some documentation updates coming shortly. But as you're going through, please, as Evan had mentioned, file GitHub discussions or issues for any things that you see, as we want to make sure to go through and make that very clear for individuals. So thank you so much. I'm seeing in chat a good question from Amal of, do we have a comparison of semantic kernel features available on .NET and Python? And so I would say what we have structured our all up GitHub for is each of the different languages is in a root folder, and then within samples, there are through different concepts and different items there. Another really good way to be able to see the comparison and see the code for both .NET and for Python is going through our documentation. There's a easy toggle across all three languages for .NET, Python, and Java to be able to see samples. But I'm curious, Amal, is there a specific feature or a specific set that you're wanting to see the functionality for both .NET or Python, or looking for a comparison? Would love to kind of dig into the question a bit more so we can help.
I just want to know the comparison because when we are implementing, there is a debate on whether we need to go with .NET or Python. So we just want to know what we will lose if we go with Python.
Yeah, so they're at that same parity and same functionality in terms of 1.0 beyond, and so there isn't a functionality that you'd be losing. But is there a specific feature set that you're looking to implement that you're doing comparisons, or just all up across both of them?
Just all across them, not a
Okay,
specific
yep.
one.
Yep, and so that functionality across both is there. I'll let anyone from the Semantic Kernel team add if they have anything further they want to add in, but you will be getting the same functionality with both. Perfect. I'm just looking through chat, seeing that Wesley had some feedback for Heinrich. Heinrich, if you have any other questions on that, feel free to come off of mute as well. But want to open it up if there are others who have questions or things that they're working through that would love to just chat about the Semantic Kernel team, or even scenarios if you've tried out our new process framework. If you have any thoughts, would love to hear from you too. The time is really just for discussion, but any questions as well that you may have. So I'm not seeing any other questions come in chat. I'm going to give it a minute or two more to make sure there's no other major questions. But in the meantime, just want to thank everyone for joining, and for the Semantic Kernel team for everyone joining in, diving into questions, and also to Tao and Evan M for coming and presenting out of some of the Python updates as well. Great. Well, if we don't have any other questions, just want to thank everyone again. And then in between this session, feel free to use GitHub discussions if there is anything that comes up that you want to go through, and any questions you may have as well. And then we'll be back next week for Ignite and some of the updates there in office hours. And then coming in the end of November, December, there will be some office hours that we will be adjusting with the holiday season. And so stay tuned for updates there. And then, as always, looking forward to engaging with you.